Hello and welcome to You Can Do It, a Zoomcast powered by Special Olympics Maryland. I'm one of your co-hosts and co-producers, Nicolette Stearns. Shout out to our technical director, Jason, our creative consultant, Donna, and of course, the two most awesome co-hosts and co-producers around, Adam Hayes and Terrell Limerick. And special shout out to Adam for all that awesome film editing. We are so glad that you tuned in tonight for You Can Do It. Tonight is a very special and informative show, a topic that impacts all of us here in the state of Maryland. Tonight on deck, we have Christian Miele from the Maryland Department of Disabilities. He's the Deputy Secretary. And tonight, Christian is going to break down the governor's plan for disabilities that was just released on July 14th. It's a 31-page document that will have a lot of impact in all of our lives. And shout out, of course, to Kim McKay, his assistant on deck tonight. Thank you, Kim. And let's go ahead and get started tonight. Christian has a PowerPoint that he'd like to share with us, but let's give a warm welcome first to Christian and Kim. Thank you guys so much for being here. Christian, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you.
Well, good evening, everyone. Thanks for hanging out with Kim McKay and myself tonight and talking about the state disabilities plan. I love Special Olympics. My brother participated in Special Olympics when he was right before he went into high school in New Jersey. And so the Department of Disabilities were always thrilled to support Special Olympics. And before COVID, Kim and Secretary Beatty and I all got to support Special Olympics at Towson University, which is where I went to college. So it was really great to see many of you there. So what I'd like to do is just go through the state disabilities plan, which, as Nicolette just mentioned, was released over the summer. And it was an incredible amount of work to get this plan up and running. But we're happy to share it with everyone tonight and then happy to have a conversation about it and answer some questions about it. So what we wanted to first do is just talk a little bit about the Maryland Department of Disabilities. We are the only cabinet level, which means we have our secretary on the governor's cabinet. We're the only cabinet level Department of Disabilities in the entire United States of America. And that's something that we're very, very proud of here in Maryland. We were created in 2004 through legislation that was introduced by then Governor Bob Ehrlich. We focus on policies, not services. So whereas DDA and some of the other sister agencies at the state level actually help to deliver those services, we're mostly focused on being policymakers, helping the legislators make good policy, and advocating for policy that advances the rights of Marylanders with disabilities. So we have policy directors. The way that the department is organized, we have policy directors for different areas of life. So we have an employment policy director who helps people with disabilities have access to the job market. We have an emergency preparedness policy director who helps make sure that people with disabilities rights are protected when we have emergency events like with COVID, when we were making sure that everybody had equal and equitable access to the vaccine or to testing. Cecilia Warren, who's our policy director for emergency preparedness, was helping in that regard. We have specialists and policy directors in the areas of housing and in community living and independent living and all these transportation and many other policy areas. So we like to consider ourselves sort of the government consultants whenever policies are being made. We're making sure to look at those policies through the eyes of somebody that might have a specific need or accommodation, and we're making sure to let everybody know about that, the importance of inclusiveness in that regard. Our statute that created our department in 2004 says that we have to have a secretary or our deputy secretary that actually has a disability. So that was actually in the law that we felt that it was important, that self-advocacy was also an important plank of the department's mission. And then also our department, we advise and consult on the development of the state disability plan, which we're going to cover tonight. So the law that established The state disabilities plan is 7-132, which requires the creation of this plan and every several years a revision to that state plan to make sure that we're making improvements where necessary. Time and practice will reveal to us where we need to make improvements or where we need to add or subtract from the plan. And as the PowerPoint says, each of these plans that we pass, it's in effect for a period of 3 years. So as I sort of alluded to, the purpose of the state disabilities plan is to coordinate the services that ensure, number one, compliance with the Federal Americans with Disabilities Act, which, as many of you know, was passed in 1991, and other federal and state laws related to civil rights. We're also promoting people with disabilities achieving what we call maximum participation in the community and improving specific areas of community participation. So we want to make sure that everybody's opportunities, whether you have a disability or no disability, you have equal access to opportunities in your community so you can have a maximal independence in terms of your life. The state disability plan is revised every 4 years. And we don't just do it in a vacuum at the Department of Disabilities. There are a number of people that that participate in the development of the plan. We have, of course, our policy directors, and then we have other state agencies, and then we have some non-state partners too, which would include a lot of our nonprofit advocacy groups that we consult with. And then we have other stakeholders who are identified as either parents or self-advocates or community leaders. And what we did was we put out a survey, and we actually had hundreds of respondents who took this survey and helped to form the policy that comprises the state plan. And then, of course, we have a Maryland Commission on Disabilities, which advises Secretary Beatty, and they were also consulted in this plan. And the Maryland Commission on Disabilities has broad geographic representation and disability population representation throughout the state of Maryland. So we made sure to ask them what was important to them as well in terms of how this, what this plan would look like. So our approach to the plan for the next 3 years that we just passed is we did the stakeholder survey that I just mentioned. Unfortunately, because a lot of this work was taking place during the height of COVID, I think we had probably somewhere in the neighborhood of maybe 400 respondents, and I think the number is actually in the plan, which we'll be sure to share a link with everybody at the end of the talk. But I think we probably had somewhere in the neighborhood of 400 respondents, whereas in years past, I think we had somewhere in the neighborhood of maybe 600. So we still had a nice sample of respondents and a large number, but it wasn't as many as we normally would get, probably because of the pandemic. We also had focus groups, which were led by our various policy directors. So they were talking about ideas and policy proposals with their natural stakeholders. So if it was, let's say, our transportation director, he was talking to the transportation disability advocates. If it was employment, it would be our employment director talking to the associations of people that she normally interacts with when she's developing policies. We also had direct conversations with people with disabilities, our community partners, advocates, family members, as I mentioned, the Maryland Commission on Disabilities. And then what we did was we met as a policy team at the Department of Disabilities, and we had roundtable discussions, and we reviewed and proposed revisions to the existing plan. And we also tried, importantly, and I got to give Kim McKay a shout out here, we also wanted the document itself to be sort of more concise and more attractive. So Kim created a really nice Maryland colors, the color of the flag based theme. She's got lots of great pictures in there of our team in action. And she really wanted to because Kim's our director of communications, her job is to really make sure that it's a document that's fun to interact with, that you're going to want to read and share with your friends and your fellow advocates. And we just made it a more easy to understand document for all of us, because we felt that the previous document, while it was fairly well done, sometimes it was redundant or it was a little bit confusing for all of us. So we identified some areas where we can make it more streamlined and better more easy to understand, I should say. So the way that the plan is actually structured, getting into the sort of the meat of the plan, is there are 5 guiding principles whereby all of the policies, they sort of tuck under each of these 5 principles. And then we have these sort of outcomes and these goals that we're trying to reach to further these principles. And so I know one of the questions that we're going to get later is, how do we know if we're doing a good job in terms of making the improvements that we say we'd like to make? And it's really measuring the deliverables on these goals and using the data that we receive every year from our state partners to then apply that into our metric to see if we're moving the needle in the right direction, or if we're not making the improvements that we're seeking. And then that gives us the opportunity to make some adjustments and modifications along the way. So getting right into the plan, the guiding principles are as follows. So we have self-direction. And the principle of self-direction simply is that individuals with disabilities, they're the ones that get to determine how they want to live. So my brother, for example, he gets to self-direct his services based on what's right for him, what he's comfortable with, rather than having somebody else make those decisions, because independence is so very important for all of us. Number 2 is financial well-being. And that principle stands for the idea that individuals with disabilities have equal opportunity to earn money and to secure their own financial well-being. That means access to the job market, and that means leveraging your educational opportunities and various training opportunities into work, and meaningful work at that, purposeful work. So doing what you love to do and earning money to do what you love to do, with no barriers, no blockades, nothing holding you back from reaching your dreams and living those dreams. Number 3 is maximizing resources. And the idea behind this is that departments like the Department of Disabilities, the DDA, and DOORS and other state agencies, they're going to utilize the resources and the monies that we're given in the budget responsibly. So we're going to make sure that the money is used wisely, that it's getting to the end user, which it's designed to get to. And again, that we're managing that process to make sure that our programs are effective and they're efficient, and that there's no waste of taxpayer dollars in the delivery of these important services and resources. Number 4, accessible communications. This is one that I absolutely love, because I think we at the Department of Disabilities, we believe so strongly in this. Not only does Kim McKay, our Director of Communications, do a wonderful job making sure that we are using captions when the department is sponsoring programs, and that we have accessible technology. But recently, the department took a very important step in the past couple of years. We actually hired a coordinator for IT accessibility, and his name is Andrew Drummond, and he does a wonderful job. What he's really been focused on is looking at all of our state websites and all the information that the state government is presenting to the public, and making sure that no matter what disability you might have, whether it's if you're blind or deaf or hard of hearing, that you're able to obtain that information just as anybody else would, and there are no barriers in terms of our website. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done to make sure that we have equitable access to our IT resources, but he has done a really, really remarkable job addressing these issues and making sure that our partners across state government and the webmasters are aware of how to make sure that our websites are accessible. And then finally, we're excited to announce that in this new disabilities plan, as opposed to the previous ones, we actually added a health and wellness plan, and that focuses on making sure that there's access to resources and services that promote your health and wellness. And that's not just physical health, that could be mental health as well. But we have a great program at the state of Maryland that we work on at the Department of Disabilities with our partners at the Department of Natural Resources and with our colleges and universities. It's called Access Maryland. And we want to make sure that we have outdoor activities like fishing piers, and we actually partner with groups called CRAB. They do boating and adaptive sports. And we want to make sure that these resources exist. Our job through the plan is to make sure that people are aware that these resources exist for them, so that you can get out and enjoy all these great outdoor and in some cases indoor programs. Kim McKay and I took a great tour of the University of Maryland Institute of Orthopedics a few years ago, and they've got amazing sport amenities that they're providing for people. And then of course, let's not forget the Special Olympics, which probably does the most incredible job of all with recreational opportunities, athletic opportunities, competitive sports, all in good fun. And to the extent that you can continue to do it at Towson University, I'll always love coming back there to the CQ Arena, because I think it's such a wonderful venue to kick things off for our Special Olympics. So to go into the survey, the survey is as I mentioned, it's put out to a number of people. In this case, the survey was made available, I think it looks like between May 2020 through mid-June of 2020. So it was open for several weeks. And as I mentioned earlier, I thought it was around 400. It looks like the exact number is 426 respondents. Here are some of the highlights of the survey. We got feedback in a number of different categories related to disabilities. Those were, and I'll just kind of buzz through these really quick because I know I'm probably behind because I tend to talk a lot. Personal care services, housing, transportation, employment, healthcare and behavioral health, education, assistive technology, as I just mentioned, accessible IT, education, family support services, government facilities access, which I was just talking about with our partners at the colleges and universities and the Access Maryland program, crime control, public safety, the criminal justice system, and then finally telecommunications and accessible telecom. There was representation from family members, self-advocates with disabilities, educators, government representative, healthcare providers. We had a lot of employers and vocational trainers. We had a lot of input from our partners at the Office of Deaf and Hard of Hearing, which is at one of the governor's offices. We had feedback from people employed in a disability-related workplace, our DSPs, shout out to our DSPs, and person with a disability limiting or preventing use of a standard telephone, which is where the TTY services would come into effect, and the TAM. And there was also representation, importantly, from all geographic areas throughout the state of Maryland, which we typically group into 5 regions. So we've got, Southern Maryland and Western Maryland and the Eastern Shore and Central Maryland. So we like to make sure that we're hearing from people all throughout the state. The main theme across all categories was availability of services. And that was basically grouped into 2 categories, being in housing, so it means do you live with your family, or in transportation, which means transportation is provided by a family, provider, or staff. Okay, so where is the state disability plan, which I'm sure you're all going to want to check out. It's on the Department of Disabilities website. You can copy and paste that link. You could also check out our website itself and click on the link and check out the 31-page document, which is a really nicely laid out document. Okay, next slide. So if you have any questions, my contact information and Kim's contact information is on the PowerPoint. So email probably works best, especially because we're on the road quite a bit. We'll be on the road this Thursday going to the Benedictine School down in Ridgely. So that's about an hour and 45-minute commute for me. So I won't pick up the phone if you try to call that number that day. So email is always good. If you ever want to set up a conference call with me, I'd be happy to set up a call, as would Kim.
Let's first give a round of applause to Christian, everybody. Wow, and to Kim. Thank you so much, Christian, just for breaking that down and helping us understand sort of all of the moving parts of this. So we really appreciate that. That was incredibly helpful.
Thank you.
Christian, we like to kick it off with Adam, one of our co-hosts of the program tonight. Adam has 3 questions that he would like to ask you, and then actually has 4, and then we're going to turn it over to Terrell. So I'm going to go ahead and say, Adam, you have got the Zoom square for Christian.
Thanks, Nick. Hi, Christian. So first, I'd like to ask you, as the governor created the state disabilities plan, how were those with all types of disabilities included to help make it successful?
Yeah, it's a great question. So when we did the survey and when we did our focus groups, we made sure to reach out to all the various disability groups and partners. Of course, we couldn't control whether everybody filled out the survey, but we wanted to make sure that our stakeholders, it was a very broad group that was broadly geographically distributed throughout all corners of the state of Maryland, but then also we got feedback from different disability groups, whether it was intellectual and developmental disabilities, our partners at the NFB or our partners at the Office of Deaf and Hard of Hearing. And then of course, all the advocacy groups that are more than on the nonprofit side, as well as our sister agencies throughout state government.
Great. So what is the governor's goal for people with disabilities for the use of this plan?
So the governor's, his overall theme is changing Maryland for the better. One way that we do that through this plan is through the idea of breaking down all barriers that would prevent people from living the life of their dreams. So whether that is access to employment and getting a job, thinking about innovative ways, even if you didn't have, let's say, a 4-year college degree, other training opportunities and other educational opportunities, certificate programs. We're working on an exciting program where you can actually get credentials. Like, let's say you really like cars and you want to, and you have no experience working at an auto body shop, you can actually have a training module and learn how to, like, let's say, change oil. And then Jiffy Lube might want to hire you because you've got that credential. Jiffy Lube doesn't care if you had a 4-year degree. They want to know that you can change oil in that car. So we're working with all in the private sector too, to knock down some of those barriers. Also with education too. There are more and more programs that are popping up across the country, which are career track based programs that are helping people get access to the job market and having alternative means of educational opportunities at the, I should say post-secondary education opportunities.
Do you think one part of the plan is more important than the other?
No, I think it's really a holistic plan. I think you really need all 5 with the new 5th principle, all 5 of those principles working together, because if you put too much emphasis on one, like let's say we put all the emphasis on financial well-being, but not on, the state government doing a good job maximizing resource, or neglecting mental health, that wouldn't really be serving or changing Maryland for the better to the utmost. So I think we're really trying to advance each of these 5 principles, because they all really do work in concert. But when you develop any plan, we're trying to articulate as best as we can. All right, these are the things that we're seeing that need to be improved or really advanced forward. Like, I think we've made a lot of progress since the Americans with Disabilities Act, but as we're seeing, there are still lots of areas of improvement. There are still websites that are not fully accessible. We still saw that situation where our Paralympian gold medalist hero Becca Myers did not get the personal care assistant that she needed to go to the Tokyo Paralympic Games. And, she would have brought home some more gold medals. We know that, but the system didn't work for her. So a lot of this drives that systems change. And even though there was nothing we could have done to help her in that case, we're trying to always find those pockets and those areas where we can make a difference and we can make some improvements.
Really important work. Lastly, what can adults with intellectual disabilities do to participate in future projects that help further the governor's goals for building a better future for people with disabilities?
Yeah, great question. So there are a number of things you can do in the IDD community specifically. One of the best things you can do is DD Day. Has anyone ever been to DD Day in Annapolis?
Oh, yes, I have.
Yeah. So I'm sure you all had a great time. Sometimes there's as many as 800 self and parent advocates that come down, and you really get to learn the ins and out of how government works. You get to meet your representatives. And I think, in terms of ways to get involved, I think that's such a good question that Adam asked. That's one way where that you can have a direct impact on seeing some of these changes take place. Also, what you all are doing by participating in these educational programs, participating in Special Olympics, participating in your community, I think all of that sort of works hand in hand. So find things that you like to do, find things you enjoy. And then my personal philosophy is, if you find something that you're passionate about in life, you can never go wrong, because there's a reason that it's kind of gripped your heart and it's kind of made you want to focus on that so much. So, find something that interests you, and then you can get involved that way. Or, participate on the Maryland Commission of Disabilities. You don't have to be a member to participate in the meetings. There are so many organizations out there that would love to have, you participating on a committee or event planning. There's just great opportunities out there. So feel free to email me and we can plug you into some of our partner organizations who are doing lots of great work in that area. And definitely, I'm not sure if DD Day will be in Annapolis or if they're going to do a virtual program because of the pandemic. But if it is going to be in person and safe to come down, I definitely encourage everyone to experience that at least once if you haven't already.
That's
Really great information. Thank you. Terrell, I know you had some questions. Why don't you take over?
So Kristen, the first question is home and jobs. How will disability will handle that? Do you got an idea?
About getting access to the job market.
Yes, job market.
Yeah. So the best thing is, I would say, and Kim, probably the ARC has a lot of great resources in this too. Also, our employment director, Jade Gingrich, does. But there are a lot of specific businesses that we've identified that they're really committed to hiring people with disabilities because they know that there are gaps. They know that people with disabilities, the number of them in the job market is not where it should be, and it's less than people that don't have disabilities. So there are a lot of partner organizations, a lot of law firms actually that are hiring staff right now. There's an interesting article that came out that I read a couple of years ago that, and employers are finding this out, and it's good for them. Employers that hire people with disabilities actually increase their bottom line. They increase their profits. They become more successful because the people with disabilities, in many cases, are just better, harder workers. Don't know why. That's what the study suggested. So I think and I think as a state, we have a responsibility, not just our department, but everybody from the governor on down to be getting that message out across in our communities. Also, Terrell, there's America's Job Center, which they are situated geographically throughout the state. They can help with that. There are a lot of the day programs will have job postings, and you can find out opportunities in your local community. And that's part of the idea too, is finding a job that's close to home, nice and convenient, get more involved in your community, serve your community, all things kind of working together. But if the thing I'm most excited about, and what Jade Gingrich, our employment director, is working on, is that credentialing. It's sort of like, does anybody play video games?
Yes, I do.
So when you play video games, and I haven't been playing a lot of video games recently, and I stopped playing probably when Super Nintendo went out of style, but with like PlayStation and all the newer systems, there's like these badges, right? And if you do really well at the video game, you can unlock badges.
Yeah.
So it's kind of the same approach with the job market, where you can, and we're trying to really promote this in the private sector. If you get these job badges, like the example I talked about earlier, like you can do oil changes, you can rotate tires because you've gone through a training course to get that certification. Now you've unlocked that badge and you can market that skill. So it's not based on like those traditional barriers, which used to be like, oh, you have to have a high school diploma or you have to have a college degree. Well, now if you find these industries where that's really not relevant, but the relevant thing is whether you can actually have the skill set to do the job that's required. Now, all of a sudden, I think we're going to increase the number of people that have access to the job market. And that's a big thing that's happening throughout the country right now, especially in Idaho. They're doing these credentials and these badges better than anybody right now. And Idaho is not known for a whole lot outside of potatoes. But when it comes to these it's called nano credentials or micro credentials, they're really doing some exciting work. So that's a great question. Thank you.
Wow. And also, so couple of my friends are looking for houses and all that, and they have disability. And I told them to check on the website and all that, and they come back to me and they say they try, but nothing happens. So I say, okay, ask your mom was looking for help. I'm not your dad.
As we speak, I'm putting the name of our director of housing programs and policies in the chat box. You will not find probably a more passionate and dedicated person to housing than Chelsea Heyman at the Department of Disabilities. So I'm just dropping her email in. So if you have any questions about housing whatsoever, I just put Chelsea's contact information. It's just chelsea.heyman@maryland.gov.
All right, good
She's
job.
Absolutely.
If a person looking, I'm an actor. I'm so if a person who has disability trying to find a acting program, my acting program is Austrian. And but not only that, but other sports and other work, other hiking trail and all that. So do they do disability people have like a job that can show people around the neighborhood or something?
Like activities, right, Terrell? Just
Yes,
different
activity.
activities throughout the state that could be like an art stream or hiking.
Right.
We actually are doing, and this is really exciting. And Kim, feel free to jump in because Kim had a lot to do with this as well, especially with the recent citation that the governor just put out, or the proclamation rather, was Disability Achievement and Culture Month. And so the idea behind that was that the Department of Disabilities would partner with our fellow stakeholder partners, and we would be promoting whenever people with disabilities are making great strides and doing great work in the fields of like the arts, music, entertainment, theater, even like athletics, like Becca Myers and our other Paralympian gold medalists and ESPY award winners. So we're trying to get the word out about that. And I think, Kim, to the extent that maybe social media is a good way for the listeners on the call tonight to go to the Department of Disabilities Facebook page to check out some of the highlights that we're doing. And we'll also probably drop in there information about these venues for getting involved with the arts and music.
Yeah, for sure. We were very excited that the governor issued an executive order in July, making every July in the state of Maryland Disability, Culture, and Achievements Month. So we're gonna, we just typically celebrate the Americans with Disabilities Act anniversary in July on one day. So instead of just one day highlighting things, we're going to use the whole month to highlight all kinds of activities for, like he mentioned, whether it's a cultural thing or arts, or, like you said, acting or music or what have you. We're going to take the whole month and we are just going to celebrate. July is going to be awesome, but we're going to, try to expand that. And, we had one day and now we've got a month, and then maybe, we just keep taking a little bit more each time and trying to make sure that folks are paying attention to everyone in the community and that everyone has things to contribute. And so that's really what the month is about and what the governor is really trying to make sure that folks understand. And so that's why we have that.
Yeah, exactly. And Terrell, to the extent that there's success stories that you and your fellow advocates want to share with us, we'd love to get that stuff out there on our channels to let people know about the opportunities that they might not know about, especially Special Olympics. Like Special Olympics, it's amazing. I mean, the energy, the experience, the friendships that are forged. That's just one example of some really amazing work that's happening and opportunities that are going on throughout the state. So please let us know as things come up. And of course, whenever there's Special Olympics events, we always like to attend those too. It's fun for us as well, even though we don't get to participate necessarily. But we'd love to be there to support you.
And Terrell, I know that you wanted to ask before I open it up. You mentioned earlier today about how this plan makes our lives what?
Better.
Well, it's if you look at the plan and you follow those principles, and then when you click on the plan, you can look at the different objectives that we have. Each of those objectives is striving to fulfill our vision of advancing those principles, which we deem to be sort of the most important things that we could be striving for. So just one example would be what we talked about earlier, which was housing. Mm-hmm. So the number of units that we're able to rent out and get people into the community and have independent living in the community we can increase that number as a proportion of the number of people that are looking for those opportunities, we would consider that a success, that measure an improvement. And that's one way that we can help people with disabilities. But there are just countless examples, and every year, and this was an important point that I forgot to mention earlier, we do an annual progress analysis every year where we're collecting data from all of the agencies that actually provide the services, and they're reporting back to our Director of Interagency Affairs, who's creating this annual report. And then from that, we're pretty much going to do like a report card, like a check-in. Okay, at the end of 2021, how do we perform on all these measurable goals and outcomes as compared to the year before? We want to make sure that we're still moving in the right direction, or if we are able to identify issues or problems that need to be resolved, it gives us that opportunity to say, all right, well, why didn't this work out the way it planned? And then allows us to kind of dig in deeper and figure out what some of the underlying causes of a lack of progress might be. So it's a flexible plan, and it's a very fluid plan, but the goals are all really strong goals to be working toward.
Excellent. And Adam and Terrell, those were fantastic questions. Thank you guys. I really appreciate that. We're going to hold space now, Christian and Kim, and open this up to all of our Zoomers tonight. I see we already have 3 questions ready to go. We'll start with Joe, then we'll go to Derek, and then Melissa. And you guys, we'll have time for 1 question for Christian. Joe, we're going to start with you. You've got the You Can Do It Zoom Square. You can go ahead and unmute.
Hey, Chris. My name is Joe. I'm an advocate for Tiger Community Resource. We have a lot of clients say some clients have a transportation issue. They want to apply a mental access, Washington D.C. metropolitan mental system. They say, I'm sorry, this disability, because I'm kind of worried about that, kind of very angry for this issue. We need to do something about that Washington D.C. metropolitan mental system.
So we have a new transportation director. I'm glad you brought this up, because he is just recently, as in like 2 weeks ago, he's trying to find opportunities where the Baltimore metro system and have some linkages with the Washington metro system to make sure that services are being optimized, and that one's not doing a superior job to another, that it's a seamless system. So let's say you're traveling from Baltimore to Washington or vice versa, that there are access points all around. So Bong is he's a self-advocate. He's an electric wheelchair user, so he relies heavily on public transportation. So he actually does tours around the state and looks like at floating bus stops, for example, and some other transportation hubs. So I'd like to connect you. Oh, I think Kim just put Kim just put Bong's contact information in the chat box. He would love to hear from you. He is actively seeking feedback like your concern, and he'd love to work with you on that. And he also has a work group for this very issue. So thank you, Joe.
That was great. Joe, fantastic question. Thank you. All right, next up we have Derek. You've got the Zoom Square question for Christian.
My question is, how do you get all these ideas from things that you work on? Okay, I know you do some servers, but do you get like questions, I guess, and stuff you work on throughout the community with parents, I guess, and caregivers?
Yeah, for specific to the state disabilities plan.
Mm-hmm.
So the plan was actually developed several years ago, and so what we've been working on, because I've been with the department, and Kim's been with the department for, let's see, probably about almost 3 years now. So we sort of inherited the existing plan, and then we met with our stakeholders to ask them what changes, if any, needed to be made to that plan. So that's how we came up with new ideas. The health and wellness one, though, Derek, that idea really sprung from all of our universal experience with COVID. So COVID had a really devastating impact on people with mental health issues, specifically because they were kept inside. A lot of people were scared to go outside. Like my brother, for example, didn't leave the house for 1.5 years. I'm sure that took a toll on him, even though we haven't had that conversation. So that was super, super important that we within the framework of it being safe, wanted to make sure that public health emergencies in the future, since we all just learned what a super virus looks like and how it impacts our society, whether it's testing or wearing masks or changing our policies and the way we do things, we wanted to make sure that we are remembering this experience, not forgetting it, so that if something like this happens in the future, we're prepared to respond accordingly. I'm just going to give you one example really quick. So when it came down to, let's say, getting the mass vaccination centers set up, like we set them up throughout the entire state. Let's say you were blind, making sure that we had the navigators in place to get the blind person from point A to point B, make sure they got tested, make sure they didn't lose their place in line, make sure that there were proper modes of communication for them, whether it would be screen readers or the like. So having people who could be interpreters on site as well. All that stuff we learned in the pandemic, hey, these could be issues, so we can respond accordingly to them in the future. And we on the ground and we respond as best we can, but there's always room for improvement, especially when these once in a lifetime things come up.
Yeah, great question, Derek. Thank you. All right, we have Melissa, who is next. Melissa, you got the Zoom square.
Does people help you with the meeting if you do a speech in front of the people?
Kim helps me a lot when I give speeches. So Kim's a parent advocate. She knows a lot of these issues inside and out. So a lot of times where we give talks or speeches, it's a team effort where a lot of research will go into it to make sure that we have accurate information that we're giving to people. But we're also, a lot of what we do is advocacy, but it's also kind of tied to education. Educating people on what is available to them. One thing, I was just talking to a parent the other day whose child has autism, and just they're really having a difficult time with that transition from high school into what's next, which is, in his case, it's the workforce. But the gap was too long. So how do we narrow that gap? And so, yeah, it's always, when we're out there, like if Kim and I are working on a project together, whether it's the state disabilities plan or whether it's Secretary Beatty giving a speech at a meeting of the ARC of Maryland, or on DD Day, for example, where we always give talks. Yes, we're constantly having conversations and helping one another with that. That's a great question, Melissa. Thank you.
All right. I would love to see, does anybody else have any more questions? You can raise your hand or you can use the icon, either one. David Godoy has a question. All right, David, you've got the Zoom square.
On behalf of all those athletes and myself, we are very pleased to see that the new plan on place, and these are actually things that are going to help us for our independence when we had to live by ourselves and do things by ourselves. For example, we had to learn how to do our own cooking, own laundry, vacuuming, had to do catching the bus by ourselves, crossing the street by ourselves. And this new plan will help us guide us through the process in a much easier way.
Thank you for those kind words. And you just made me think of something. Our MD TAP program, it's the technology assistive program. We have, like you said, things like cooking, things like cleaning just around the house when you're living independently. There's actually some great resources out there to make, depending on whatever the disability or what the accommodation need might be. There's some really innovative technology to help make some of that stuff easier around the house. So we've got Lori Markland's our director of that program. So that's also on the website, David. So if anyone wants to check that out, it's just MD TAP, Maryland Technology Assistive Program. If they're interested in maybe some tools around the house, programs to make life easier and more manageable around the house. Thank you.
Excellent. Okay. All right. Well, let me throw it back to Terrell or Adam. Do you have any other questions that you want to ask Christian?
So here's just an question that came off the top of my head. Do you have? I know that I've participated in a program where you can get funding for I guess maybe it's part of the technology assistance, but can you talk a little bit like about how people with disabilities can get funding to get certain items that they might need, like let's say if they need assistance for their job or whatever?
Right. Yeah, there's going to be vocational training, some job training through the communities of independent living, which are known as the CILs. Those are geographically dispersed throughout the state. And then, as you mentioned, Adam, with the MD TAP program, most of what they have, they may have like low cost or reduced cost items that you can get, like whether it's a screen reader or certain like really cool like utensils and different technological tools that they have for discounted prices for Marylanders. So the cost has been already sort of defrayed on that and subsidized so that it makes it more affordable for people to purchase those items for their houses.
Great.
Wow. Okay. Adam, thank you. That was a great question. All right. Well, Terrell, can you tell us when we're going to be back?
Yeah, be here on Zoom. We will be here in 2 weeks. Be here or be square.
That's right. And Adam, any final words before we close out our very, very informational show tonight?
And remember, everyone, bring your questions for next week or for next time, and remember, stay positive.
Awesome. And to learn more about everything that Christian shared with us, please check out Maryland Department of Disabilities website. Let's give a round of applause to Christian and Kim for coming tonight, spending time with us on You Can Do It. And remember to catch us every Friday on Channel 21, Montgomery County Cable. We're powered by Special Olympics Maryland. And again, thank you so much to Christian and to Kim. This was really an incredible show. We've learned so much, and we're all going to take everything we've learned and share it with our community. So thank you, everybody. Good night, everybody.
It was such a great time being with you
night.
tonight. Thank you for the invitation. Kim and I are always happy to support you however we can, and the department is too. Thanks, Nicolette. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Be well, everyone.